Come on, it's Spicoli. Just put the shirts back on. You see that sign? No shirt, no shoes, no dye. All right, remember when a teen movie about pizza, pirate uniforms, and mall jobs accidentally launched Blockbuster and multiple Oscar careers? In 1982, Fast Times at Ridgemont High hit theaters courtesy of Universal Pictures, and what looked like just another sun-soaked R-rated high school comedy turned into a generational time capsule. Directed by Amy Heckerling and written by Cameron Crowe, the film starred a then-unknown lineup that included Sean Penn, Judge Reinhold, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Forrest Whitaker, and a blink-and-you-miss-him Nicolas Cage. At the time, just a bunch of kids hanging out at the mall. In hindsight, the class of '82. But behind the Van slip-ons, Camaro carnage, and Damone's 5-point plan, there's a whole lot of weird that most of us never knew about. Today, we're counting down 15 weird facts about Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And stick around for number 1 because it involves undercover journalism, a real high school, and the moment that made this movie feel way too real. Now, before we get started, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't end up like Brad Hamilton working the fryer in a pirate costume. And let us know in the comments, what's the first thing you think of when someone says Fast Times? Number 1, the undercover teen detective who gave us Spicoli. Most writers research a movie by reading books, conducting interviews, and maybe visiting a location for a long weekend. Cameron Crowe enrolled in high school, not as a guest, not as an observer with a clipboard and a visitor's badge, as a student. In 1979, the 22-year-old convinced the principal at Claremont High School to let him pose as a senior under the name Dave Cameron. 1 full year, classes, pep rallies, cafeteria, mystery meet, the whole experience. And this wasn't some bored journalist fishing for a magazine piece. Crowe had already road-tripped with Led Zeppelin at 16 and written for Rolling Stone as a teenager. He'd hung out with rock gods and decided the real story was hiding in a suburban high school hallway. He soaked up everything. The gossip, the parking lot conversations, the awkward dances, the kid who actually had a pizza delivered to class mid-lecture. Every moment written down in field notes like a war correspondent embedded in 10th period. That's why Fast Times at Ridgemont High doesn't sound like adults guessing what teenagers talk like. The dialogue wasn't workshopped in a writer's room. It was inspired by real conversations in real hallways, real food courts, and real classrooms. When the book came out, the students at Claremont finally realized what happened. The quiet, older kid who never said much in homeroom had been documenting everything. Spicoli, the surfer burnout blueprint for every stoner character in cinema since, inspired by real students Crowe observed at Claremont. Brad Hamilton, the patron saint of every teenager who ever got humiliated at a summer job, drawn from Crowe's notes on several students he'd befriended. Most 22-year-olds in 1979 were trying to figure out Rent. Crowe was building a time capsule, one that launched future Oscar winners, redefined the teen comedy, and gave us a movie we're still quoting over 4 decades later. All because one guy raised his hand in a high school he had no business being in and said, "Yeah, I'm Dave. I'm new here." Number 2, the $5 million gamble. Universal Pictures' game plan for Fast Times at Ridgemont High was simple. Hand a first-time director around $5 million and let her make a throwaway teen movie. Modest budget, modest expectations. Let the kids ogle, sell some tickets, and move on. No awards expectations, no lasting cultural impact, just skin, angst, and whatever popcorn they could sell alongside it. Nobody told the audience that, though. The movie raked in over $27 million domestically, more than 5 times its budget. Teens were lining up, sneaking in, and dragging their friends back for second and third viewings. An R-rated teen comedy with no major stars, made for pocket change by Hollywood standards, and it outperformed movies with 10 times the marketing muscle. And about that R rating, the studio was convinced it would kill them. No teenager will pay to see this. Meanwhile, Gen Xers like us, we were out there trying to find creative solutions. Distracted ticket takers, helpful older siblings, strategic timing, everyone found a way in.
That modest gamble turned into a massive return and basically rewrote the rules for teen comedies. Hollywood realized that if you treat teenagers like actual humans with awkward moments, bad jobs, and social humiliation, they will throw money at you gladly. Universal got a pile of cash. We got a cultural touchstone. And honestly, I think that's a fair trade. Number 3, Mr. Hand was based on a real teacher. Mr. Hand was a total buzzkill, the sworn enemy of vibes, the only man in Southern California immune to Spicoli's surfer charm. But here's the thing, he wasn't some creative cartoon villain cooked up in a writer's room. He was real. Mr. Hand is actually based on a real teacher, a man who was absolutely obsessed with one concept: his time. Not school time, not shared time, his time. Every whisper, every distraction, every rogue slice of pepperoni, it was a personal theft from the man's lifespan. So when it came time to cast Mr. Hand, they didn't grab some red-faced screamer. They cast Ray Walston, a seasoned pro who understood that true authority doesn't yell, it withers. Walston didn't explode, he observed, he paused, and he delivered lines like a man calmly filing paperwork on your future. Mr. Hand worked because he wasn't evil, he genuinely wanted you to learn U.S. history and stop acting like Woodstock was still happening in the hallway. At 16, though, when he tore up those concert tickets, it felt like a federal offense. Looking back, he might have been the only adult in the building thinking long-term, but in Ridgemont, he was the man. Number 4, rock royalty roasts a red light extra. There's a small moment in Fast Times at Ridgemont High that most people didn't think twice about in 1982. Brad Hamilton is stuck at a red light, drowning in a Captain Hook meets Deep Fryer uniform, looking like he lost a bet with the costume department. A woman in the next car takes one look at this tragic tableau and cracks up laughing. That woman, Nancy Wilson from Heart, as in Barracuda, Crazy on You, Hall of Fame shredding guitar since the 70s, Nancy Wilson. The cameo happened because Wilson was dating Cameron Crowe at the time. When your boyfriend is writing the most talked about teen comedy of 1982, apparently you get pulled into a scene whether you planned on it or not. Nancy and Cameron got married 4 years later in 1986, and that connection kept paying creative dividends. Wilson contributed music to several of Crowe's later projects, including composing the score for Almost Famous, the semi-autobiographical film about Crowe's teenage years as a rock journalist. So the woman who laughed at Brad Hamilton's worst moment eventually helped score one of the most beloved music films ever made. Not a bad arc for a blink-and-you-miss-'em red light cameo. Number 5, Amy Heckerling, queen of the teen movie. Amy Heckerling didn't care what anybody thought. Fast Times at Ridgemont High was her first feature film, and she turned Crowe's source material into a heart-punching, hilarious, perfectly awkward slice of suburban adolescence. She was 27 years old, fresh out of the AFI conservatory, and handed the keys to a movie full of unknowns, mall food courts, and enough R-rated chaos to make a studio executive sweat through a sport coat. What made Heckerling different was the tone. In 1982, most directors would have treated this material like a punchline factory. Crank up the raunch, laugh at the dumb kids, cash the check, baby. Heckerling went the other way. She made you laugh, sure, but she also made you feel something. The character meltdowns are hilarious, but you ache for the guy, because you've been that guy. And that balance, funny without being cruel, is way harder than it looks. She went on to direct Clueless over a decade later, and the fact that she nailed teenagers in both decades tells you everything about her instincts. But it all started here, at Ridgemont High, with a debut director who looked at a raunchy teen comedy and found something real underneath it. Most debut films get forgotten. Heckerling's became a blueprint.
Number 6, The Math of the 5-Point Plan. Now, if you were a nervous 16-year-old sweating through an IZOD at the spring fling, the 5-Point Plan wasn't comedy, it was gospel. But here's the twist.
What you need is my special 5-point plan. Come on, Damone, I need real help here.
In Cameron Crowe's original book, the non-fiction account that became the basis for Fast Times at Ridgemont High, it wasn't even 5 points, it was 3. Yeah, a 3-point plan. When they adapted it for the screenplay, somebody wisely realized that 3 rules weren't nearly enough to support Damone's persona, so they upgraded it.
5 points. More build-up, more delusion, more comedy.
You never let on how much you like a girl.
Oh, Debbie.
Hi.
And then Robert Romanus delivered the whole thing like he was teaching a masterclass at Harvard Business School.
Don't ever let on how much you like her. Whenever possible, but on side 1 of Led Zeppelin 4. Wherever you are, that's the place to be.
For about 90 seconds, he makes it sound airtight, scientific, like he's cracked the romantic code of the entire universe. And we bought every single word. At least half of us tried point 4 at a party. You know the move. Lean against a wall, nod like you're above it all, pretend you absolutely meant to be standing alone by the punch bowl. Meanwhile, in the actual movie, the plan crashes and burns spectacularly. Because, shocker, taking relationship advice from a ticket scalper might not be the path to emotional maturity. But for one glorious moment in 1982, Damone gave an entire generation of awkward teenagers something priceless: confidence. Completely unearned and wildly misguided, but confidence nonetheless. 40-plus years later, people still quote it like it's peer-reviewed science. Damone would be proud, and probably still single. Number 7. The Z28 Tragedy and a Legend's Debut. In the early 80s, a Chevrolet Camaro Z28 was the pinnacle of high school parking lot royalty. Polished, roaring, and basically screaming, "I'm better than your entire carpool." Owning one meant you'd made it. Wrecking one meant someone was going to end you. Spicoli chose violence. We never actually see the crash, just the aftermath in Spicoli's panicked retelling. And honestly, that's worse. Your imagination did all the heavy lifting. For anyone who spent high school nursing a hand-me-down Pinto with a prayer and a loose gas cap, this was a full-body horror experience. But then comes the cover-up, and this is peak teenage logic. Spicoli tries to pin the damage on Lincoln High. No forensic planning, no alibis, just desperation and a dream. The beautiful part? Jefferson buys it completely.
Jefferson's gonna really make Lincoln pay for this.
Revenge follows, and then he takes whatever fury is left onto the football field and plays like the Z28's ghost is coaching him from the sideline. One joyride, one cover-up, one of the most satisfying chain reactions in 80s comedy. And for a generation of car-obsessed kids who couldn't even afford gas money, you laughed, you winced, and you silently thanked the universe it wasn't your car. Number 8. The pepperoni-scented truth. The pizza delivery scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High is one of the most quoted moments in 80s comedy. Spicoli orders a full pizza to Mr. Hand's classroom. Delivery guy walks right in, hands over the box mid-lecture.
"Order the double cheese and sausage right here, dude."
No shame, no hesitation, no apology. And for some high school kids, that wasn't fiction. Before Uber Eats, kids trying to get a rise out of their teacher would pull the exact same stunt. The absolute confidence of a teenager who looked at a classroom full of people and thought, yeah, this needs pepperoni. But what nobody anticipated was what happened after the movie came out. Fast Times turned pizza to class into a nationwide dare. Suddenly, every school in America had at least one kid calling Domino's from the payphone and giving the delivery driver a room number instead of an address. Teachers spent the rest of the 80s intercepting pizza guys in hallways and confiscating slices like contraband.
Who is it? Mr. Pizza Guy again.
Mr. Pizza Guy, sir. All because one scene gave an entire generation the same terrible, beautiful idea at the exact same time. Now, most of us were way too terrified of our own Mr. Hands to even chew gum in class. But for the brave few who actually tried it, y'all are legends. Number 9. The greatest soundtrack betrayal of 1982. There's a scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High that's burned into the memory of every person who saw it. You know the one. Phoebe Cates, the pool, the slow-motion exit, Judge Reinhold's, let's call it a daydream, and the song underneath all of it was moving in stereo by the Cars, and it became permanently fused to that moment. You can't hear the opening notes without your brain auto-completing the rest. It's one of the most recognized music cues in 80s cinema, period. So naturally, when you rushed out to buy the official Fast Times soundtrack, it wasn't there. Not on side A and not hiding on side B. It was just gone. Due to licensing constraints, Moving in Stereo was left off the official 1982 soundtrack release, despite being the single most memorable piece of music in the entire film. If you wanted it, you had to go buy the Cars' 1978 debut album separately, which, to be fair, is a stacked record, so it wasn't exactly a hardship, but the principle of the thing is outrageous. The most unforgettable music moment in the movie didn't make the movie's own soundtrack. You had one job, Elektra, one job. Totally bogus. 40-plus years later, people still quote it like it's peer-reviewed science. Damone would be proud, and probably still single. Number 10. The Holy Land, Sherman Oaks Galleria. Director Amy Heckerling didn't want a fake backlot mall or some dressed-up soundstage. She wanted the real valley epicenter. Escalators, neon lights, food court chaos, everything. So they filmed inside the actual fully operating Galleria, which means some of those background shoppers may have been real 1982 mall-goers, genuinely wondering what was happening near the Orange Julius. The All-American Burger interiors were actually filmed on a soundstage, not inside the Galleria itself, but exterior and mall area shots were filmed on location, and the Galleria's energy is baked into every scene set around it. The set designers nailed the look well enough that most of us never questioned it. Either way, the vibe feels authentic because the bones of the film's mall world were real. And after Fast Times, the Galleria became the gold standard. Every teen movie wanted that fluorescent freedom at the food court energy. The mall went from shopping destination to cultural landmark, practically overnight. The original Galleria was eventually redeveloped in the mid-90s. The Galleria's gone, the arcade gone, the Orange Julius actually probably cost you about $9 now. But for 90 minutes, that mall lives forever, and so does the version of us who thought it was the center of the universe.